Welcome everyone! My name is Limbic, and this is Starclass, Lesson 3. In this episode I'm going to be talking about the Protoss race. I'm going to be going through most of their units, their upgrades, their researches, everything they have available to them. Now I'm not going to be going through every single last tool in the Protoss arsenal in this video, because if I did that, it would end up being way too long. But I'm going to be going through the ones that you will see most commonly, and the ones that you should probably be using most of the times in your games if you decide to be playing Protoss. So sit back, relax, and get ready to learn everything you need to know about this race. So let's start with Protoss by talking about the Protoss Town Hall, which is called the Nexus. This is the place where Protoss builds their new workers, and it's the place where Protoss workers return resources that they have harvested. Now, something a little special about the Nexus that you may or may not have already noticed is the fact that it actually has 3 bars above it instead of just 1. So the green bar is its health. Like every other building, if it runs out of health, it dies. The blue bar on top of that is its shields. So every single Protoss unit and structure in the game has a shield bar. And what shields are is basically a second form of health. Any damage that Protoss units or structures take will first be applied to the shields, and then if they're out of shields, then they will start taking damage on their health. However, when Protoss is out of combat, their shields will start to regenerate. So I'll go ahead and demonstrate this to you here. So let's grab this probe, and let's start attacking the Nexus. So you can see, yes, it is very slow because this is a probe attacking a Nexus, but the Nexus is starting to take damage, and it's taking damage on its shields first. But let's see what happens if we tell this probe to just go ahead and go back to mining and stop attacking that Nexus. Once the Nexus has been out of combat for long enough, it will start to regenerate its shield. So if you look at the bottom here, you can see that the number is starting to go back up. So what's this third bar? This is the energy, and you use this to cast spells. Now the Nexus only has 1 spell available to it, and it's called Chrono Boost. Now before I talk about exactly what it does, I would like to talk about some other Protoss structures. So we will have to wait, but trust me, it won't be that long. So let's talk about how Protoss structures are built. Let's grab a probe, you use these to construct buildings as Protoss, and let's build a pylon. This is Protoss's supply generator. Now, you may notice that Protoss structures actually build themselves. So once the probe has kind of laid down the pylon, it's free to do other things. So it can go back to mining, or you can, with just 1 probe, build a whole bunch of structures at once, like so. You do this by just holding down the hotkey that you want to build, and then holding down the shift key, and that allows you to queue up orders like I am doing here. And you can see all of these structures will complete on their own. Now, what is this ring around the pylon? This is actually the power field that it generates. All Protoss structures, except for the Nexus, the pylon, and the assimilator, which is just Protoss's version of the structure that you need to build in order to harvest Vespene gas, which you can see right here, require a power field in order to, number 1, function, but number 2, actually build. So let's try to build a gateway. You can see here, if it's not in a power field, we get this kind of red error sign, and if we try to build it, the executor will say we have to place it in a power field. And over here you saw the error text that said it must be placed near pylon. If we place it in the power field, then everything is fine and good, and the structure will begin building. Now, what would happen if the pylon was destroyed? So let's go ahead and build another gateway here, and let's pull all of these probes and kill our own pylon. This is going to take a while, so I will once again make use of movie magic by fast forwarding through this. Alright, the pylon's destroyed. Now, Protoss structures, if they've already started building, they will actually finish even if there's no pylon near them, but once they complete, they will be unpowered, which means that they are actually incapable of doing anything. So I'll go ahead and fast forward again and demonstrate that to you. Alright, so you can see we have 2 gateways here. This one is powered by pylons, so it's actually able to do things. So we can build a zealot, for example, and I'll talk more about what zealots can do in the future. But all you need to know is that this is a ground unit that Protoss can build. However, this gateway, you can see the unpowered sign right here, is actually incapable of doing anything. We can remedy this by building a pylon near it and repowering it. So you can see that once this pylon finishes, the gateway is repowered, and now it is able to build zealots just like this other gateway. Alright, now I'm going to talk about the Chrono Boost. Now, what this does is it basically puts a Protoss production facility into super speed. So let's start building a probe here. You can see the progress bar shows how much is left until the probe is complete. Now let's use the Chrono Boost. You can see now this probe is building a lot faster. And Protoss uses this in order to build their probes more quickly than the other races. Each race has their kind of own economic booster, and this is Protoss's. However, Chrono Boost can actually be used on things other than the Nexus. It can be used, for example, on these gateways. So let's build 2 zealots here, and let's Chrono Boost one of these gateways. And you will see exactly how much faster the zealot that's being Chrono Boosted will complete than the zealot that is not being Chrono Boosted. Do you see how much faster this zealot completed even though we started them both at the same time? Chrono Boost is very important. Now, you only have a limited number of Chrono Boosts, and when you start the game, you will actually start with 0 energy on the Nexus, and the Nexus will regenerate energy over time. The Chrono Boost costs 25 energy, which means that you can really easily use it much faster than the Nexus will regain its energy. Of course, if you build more than one Nexi, you will actually be able to have access to more Chrono Boosts. So let's run out of energy here. If we come over to this Nexus, which I used to just gain money, you can see it's actually full on energy. Now we can use its Chrono Boost to accelerate other structures. So that's a little bit of a bonus that Protoss has to building more Nexi. Alright, that's all I wanted to talk about with Protoss basic structures. Now we're going to hop on over to the Heart of the Swarm unit tester where I will talk about the Protoss units. Alright, here we are in the HOTS unit tester. This is a mod that allows you to create and destroy units instantly for free. This makes it a lot easier for me to showcase what I would like to demonstrate to you all here. So let's talk about Protoss units. Let's start with gateway units. Now, gateway units are units that come out of the gateway. So let's start off with the Zealot. This is Protoss's kind of really basic, kind of dumb, just lowest tier unit. Now, don't mistake that for meaning that they're not powerful, especially once they get their charge upgrade, which we'll talk about in a little bit. They can become very, very much a force to be reckoned with at any stage of the game. They're just Protoss's kind of very cheapest unit, and they do not really require any technology in order to start building them. Once you have the gateway built, you are immediately able to start building the Zealot. Now, I mentioned charge. Now, in order to research this, you will first need a Twilight Council. I'll talk about the... Well, actually, no. The Twilight Council is just a place where you research certain upgrades. The first one is charge, and the second one is blink, which we'll talk about soon. So, what is charge? It gives your Zealot the ability to gain, like, super legs. So let's demonstrate what a Zealot looks like normally. So we'll have him attack this Twilight Council. You can see he just kind of runs up there, as you might expect, and starts attacking it. Now let's have him run back and research the charge upgrade. Once it's done, if he attacks something from a distance, he will... Apparently he won't do it on allied units. So let's just create an enemy barracks here. He will charge up to it, as you can see there. So this makes it very easy for Zealots to close in on enemies that are trying to run away from them. Let's talk about the next Protoss unit. Now, in a real game, before you would be able to build this, you would need the Cybernetics Core. This structure unlocks some advanced tech units. This is where you upgrade your air units as Protoss. And it has Research, Warp Gate, which we'll talk about soon, and it gives you access to the Stalker and the Sentry. The unit we're going to be talking about now is the Stalker. This is a either ground-to-ground or ground-to-air unit. It can attack airs, and it has a ranged attack, so you can see there. It doesn't do the most damage, but it's kind of like, almost like a more surgical unit. It has the blink upgrade available to it, which is also researched at the Twilight Council, so let's go ahead and research that. And what it will give you the ability to do is to teleport a short distance instantly, like that. Now, this is on a cooldown, and the cooldown is independent for each stalker. So let's make a couple stalkers here, and as you can see, let's say I was being attacked, I could blink back this stalker once he ran out of shields, and then once this stalker ran out of shields, I could blink it back to safety, etc., etc. Or alternatively, I could just have them all, you know, in one group, and let's just wait for the blink cooldown to come up for all of them, and then I can blink them all together like this. Now, blink is very useful because obviously it allows you to close in on units trying to run away, or get away from units trying to chase you, but you can also blink up and down cliffs. So this means that with a group of stalkers, you can attack locations that your opponent probably would not expect. Alright, let's talk about the third gateway unit. This is the Sentry. Now, this is kind of a spellcaster unit. It does have a basic attack, but it does very, very small amounts of damage. It can attack air or ground, which is worth mentioning, and it also has 3 abilities available to it. So you can see it has an energy bar. Let's just go ahead and give it maximum energy, assuming I can actually figure out how to do it. It's right here. Okay, there we go. So let's talk about the Sentry's abilities. The first one is called Force Field. Now, this creates a little kind of structure here that units cannot pass. So you can see this Zealot cannot walk past this force field until it expires, and they will expire eventually. They last a pretty decently long time. Now, force fields will be destroyed by any unit that is classified as massive, so I'll just demonstrate with the Thor here. You can see down here it says Armored Mechanical Massive, so we'll create a force field here, and this Thor can just be like, yeah, I don't care about your force field. But unless it's massive, it will not be able to pass over that. Now, it does not affect air units, as you might imagine. It only affects ground, but you can use it like at your ramp in order to keep enemy units from coming up. You can use it to kind of sandwich in enemy units like this. These units can be not able to fire because you've kind of forced them back, and you can say you've trapped these units, so say your Zealot can get to them more easily. Alright, I kind of just cleared it up and I built some Marines for an opponent here, and here we have 4 sentries as Protoss. So the next ability that I would like to talk about is called Guardian Shield. It pops this little shield here. You can see that it covers over multiple units, not just the sentry casting it. And what this does is it reduces incoming ranged damage by 2. Now, 2 damage may not sound like a lot, but I'm going to use the Marine here as an example to show you how it really can be. So let's look at how the Marine attacks. You can see it does 6 damage every 0.8 seconds. That's what weapon speed means. In other words, Marines attack for very low damage, but they attack really quickly, which means that as a sentry, if you can mitigate just 2 damage, that means that you're actually basically cutting the DPS of these Marines by 33%. So I'm just going to go ahead and demonstrate to you what happens if these Marines and these sentries fight, but no Guardian Shield is cast. You can see it's pretty close, but the Marines end up winning. Now let's go ahead and reset this and demonstrate to you what would happen if we have Guardian Shield enabled for this fight. Now, I'm not individually controlling any of the units for either of these battles. You can see how much of a difference Guardian Shield can make. Of course, it really depends on the unit that the enemy is using, but as you can see, Guardian Shield really can make or break a battle. The third and final ability that the sentries have is called Hallucination. Now this enables you to create a kind of phantom version of almost any Protoss unit. So let's create some Zealots. Now these units will not be able to attack. You can see that, well, they actually can attack, but they do 0 damage. And also they take double damage. So let's just go ahead and attack with these sentries. You can see that it actually dies very quickly. Now, aside from the obvious, using these to just kind of trick your opponent, you can actually use this to scout. You can hallucinate a Phoenix, which we'll talk about a little later in the video, but they're just very quick air units, and what you can do is hallucinate one of these and then fly it over to your opponent's base, and it will be able to see what's going on just as well as a real Phoenix. And if it dies, that's okay, because you didn't actually spend any money on it, you just spent energy from a sentry. Alright, let's talk about the research at the cybernetics core. This is called warp gate. Now, gateways, before they can transform into warp gate, will produce units kind of normally. They will just build. Let's just build zealots here. You can see that it's building the way you would expect. However, once you've researched warp gate at the cybernetics core, you can transform these gateways into warp gates. And once this is done, the abilities you gain access to are very interesting indeed. So this means that your units will start to build instantly, and you can warp, well, not instantly, but much faster, and you will be able to warp them in to a location anywhere where you have power. So I built this pylon over here. Let's warp in zealots. So you can see now, that's how quickly they build. Now, of course, the warp gates do go on cooldown. You can't just warp in zealots infinitely, forever, and create a huge army that quickly. That would be a little unfair. But you are able to put them anywhere on the map as long as you have a pylon, and you are, able to create them kind of instantly instead of having to wait for them to build. Instead, you just wait for a cooldown on the gateway. Go. Alright, there's a unit that comes out of the out of the Nexus that is actually not a probe. Now, in order to build this unit, you will first need the cybernetics core, similarly to sentries and stalkers, but once you have it completed, you can start it out of the Nexus. This is called the mothership core. And this is a flying spellcaster unit. It does have a basic attack, but it is actually very weak. You build this unit for its ability. So let's give it maximum energy, and let's demonstrate all it can do. The first ability is called Photon Overcharge. So I'm going to need to basically destroy the Nexus. Let's create a mothership core here, and let's create some enemy units. Let's just use Marines for the heck of it. Oh, what? Yeah, okay. So these Marines will start attacking the Nexus. If we activate Mothership or Photon Overcharge with the Mothership, what you do is you select a Nexus, and it basically gives the Nexus an attack. So you can see now this Nexus is fighting back. Now I think I created too many Marines and the Nexus is going to lose anyway, but that would have looked a lot different if it were 1, fewer Marines, but 2, you also had some of your own units to fight back. The Photon Overcharge is a very, very powerful defensive tool, especially in the early game. The next ability is called Time Warp. This creates a little bubble on the ground. The enemy units who pass through it will have their movement speed reduced. So you can see these are Marines moving at normal speed, and these are Marines moving at speed affected by the Time Warp. The final ability is called Mass Recall, so let's just go ahead and get rid of these Marines here. Let's create some Stalkers here. Now, what Mass Recall is you again select the Nexus, and it will teleport the Mothership core and any friendly units underneath it to the Nexus after a short delay. So this is a very good way to get your units out of danger, or to come back to rescue a Nexus that is under fire. This does not have a limited range, so I could be all the way over here. I could be all the way on the other side of a map and still use Mass Recall and teleport my units back to the Mothership, or back to the Nexus. The next unit that comes out of the gateway is called the High Templar. It's this unit here that moves really slowly. Now, this unit is actually very high-tech. Not only do you need a Templar Archives, but before you can build the Templar Archives, you need to first have a Twilight Council. And then, once you have both of these structures built, you can finally start building High Templars. So these are really high-tech units. You need to have a lot built in order to unlock them. So obviously they must have some really incredible abilities, right? Because they don't even have an attack. Well, I'll go ahead and demonstrate those abilities to you here, and they are incredible. The first one that you have unlocked just by building the High Templar is called Feedback. This will purge the energy from an enemy unit, and it will deal damage to that unit equal to the amount of energy that was removed. So let's go ahead and feedback this sentry. You can see that it instantly destroyed it. Now, as I mentioned, it is dependent on how much energy was removed. So let's have this sentry basically waste most of its energy and then feedback it. You can see now it has no energy left, but it didn't deal that much damage to it because it had already expended most of its energy. Now, the next ability will actually require you to have all the structures that we already mentioned, but it will also require that you research it at the Templar Archives. It's called Psionic Storm. And this ability can truly be insane. So you can see here I have it researched. Let's have these Marines come up and let's see what happens if they try to attack this High Templar when he uses Psionic Storm well. So let's have them kind of packed up and let's have them attack. Look at what the single High Templar managed to do with Psionic Storm. Now obviously this can make or break an entire battle, and it is worth easily all the effort that you have to go through to gain access to it. The final ability that the High Templar has is called Archon Merge. Now you actually need 2 High Templar in order to do this. You can see if I have 1 just selected, that's actually grayed out, but if I have 2, then it becomes available. Once you press the hotkey, they will kind of go into this little portal thing, and then once it is completed, you will have a new unit called the Archon. This unit has, as you can see, 350 shields and only 10 health. So it is mostly reliant on its shields, and it has an incredible attack. This unit really is just incredible. It does splash damage, which is kind of hard to see with these sentries because sentries are kind of big, but just trust me, they do. In fact, I can actually demonstrate it to you. Let's just go ahead and come over to Zerg. Let's get rid of all this stuff. We don't need all this here. Let's create some Mutalisks, and let's create an Archon. Let's actually create 2 Archons for this. So let's have these Mutalisks kind of clump up as much as possible, and we'll fly them over these Archons, and let's just see what happens to them. You can see how they're, even with just 1 attack, able to hit all of these Mutalisks at once. That's what splash damage is. Alright, the final unit that comes out of the gateway is called the Dark Templar. Now, similarly to High Templar, you will first need a Twilight Council, and then in order to build these units, you will need what's called a Dark Shrine. And this structure takes a really long time to build, but once you have it unlocked, you can start building Dark Templar. So let's create one here. Now, these units are cloaked, which means that they are invisible to enemy units unless a detector is present. So you can see if we have these 2 armies attack each other, the Marines are completely helpless to fight back against the Dark Templar unless they have some kind of detector. So let's just create a Raven here and demonstrate to you the difference. So you can see now, since this detector is here, they are able to fight back against the Dark Templar. Now, Dark Templar are also able to merge into an Archon, similarly to High Templar. You need 2 Dark Templar to do this, or you can have 1 Dark Templar and 1 High Templar, but the Archon created with the Dark Templar is exactly the same as the one created with the High Templar. Alright, let's try and go through these next few units a little more quickly. The next structure that produces units for Protoss is called the Robotics Facility. The first unit to come out of it is called the Observer. This unit is cloaked and it's a detector, so kind of an odd combination, but it is invisible to enemy units unless they also have a detector, and it reveals cloaked units for you. These are very good spies. They're relatively cheap. They move pretty quickly, they fly. It's very nice to just build one of these and then kind of park it in your opponent's base, and it will observe what they are doing. And the chances of it getting caught and killed are usually very low. The next unit is called the Warp Prism. Now, this is kind of like a Protoss dropship. It can load up units, so let's just create a Zealot here. It can load it up, and then it can drop it off in other locations. What it can also do is it can transform into this mode where it actually is starting to create a power field. Now, you can't see it here with this mod, but let's just go ahead and wait for this gateway to cool down. Now, once it's in this mode, it actually cannot move around, but you can warp in units to it just like you would have to use a pylon before. And then once your units are warped in, you can go ahead and reload them into the Warp Prism and then turn it back into this mode where it can move around. Once it's in this mode, you will no longer be able to warp units to it, so you kind of do have to make that decision, but it's basically the Protoss version of the drop ship. The next unit to come out of the robotics is called the Immortal. Now, this does a monstrous amount of damage to anything classified as armored. So that is any building and, you know, also armored units. But they also have what's called the hardened shield. This means that anytime they take damage while their shields are up, as long as it's above 10, it will be reduced to 10. So let's create a Marauder here. This does 20 damage normally against armored units, which the Immortal is. But because of its hardened shield, you can see it has its own little effect there. It's actually only taking 10 damage per shot from the Marauder. However, once its shields are completely depleted, it will start taking the normal 20 damage again, as you can see here. Actually, it's taking 19 because it has 1 armor, but you get the point. So they are ground to ground only, they cannot attack air, and that's it for the Immortal. The final unit that comes out of the robotics is called the Colossus. Now, this requires you to not only have the robotics facility completed, but it requires a robotics bay. Once that is done, you will be able to build these monstrous units. Now, they only attack ground, but they also deal splash damage. So let's create some Marines here, and let's have these units attack each other. Whoops, I kind of messed this up. Let's create a Colossus for Team Blue and create some Marines here. And you can see that the Colossus will deal damage to more than 1 Marine at a time. Now, Colossi aren't amazing when they're just by themselves. Kind of like Archons, it's much better if you have like Zealots in front to take the damage, because even this small group of Marines will be able to win that fight otherwise. But if they are protected, they are able to just completely decimate an enemy army all on their own. Another unique thing about the Colossus is that it can walk up and down cliffs, and it's actually so big that it's considered to be an air unit, even though it's obviously walking on the ground. So let's move it over here. These Vikings they can only attack other air units. So you can see they cannot attack these Marines because it says must attack air units, but because the Colossus is so tall, they can actually be hit by anti-air only units. Alright, the final Protoss production structure is called the Stargate. Now, I'm not going to go through every unit in here because a lot of the units that come out of here are actually just very situational and you'll see them rarely, and this video is getting kind of long. So I'm just going to talk about the first 3. This is the Phoenix. This is Protoss's air-to-air only unit. It cannot attack ground units, but what it can do is it can lift enemy units up into the air. So let's create a second Phoenix. Now, you can see it cannot attack this SCV, but if we lift it up, while this Phoenix will not be able to attack because it's busy lifting, this Phoenix will now be able to attack the SCV because it is considered an air unit while it's being lifted up. The next unit is called the Oracle. Now, this is another flyer. Everything that comes out of the Stargate flies, and it is kind of a spellcaster unit. Its first ability is called Revelation. You put this over an area, and then enemy units that are hit by Revelation will be revealed, and they will basically provide vision for you. So I'll go ahead and make some Marines to demonstrate that for us. Let's create an Oracle here. Let's start this. Once we hit these Marines with Revelation, they have this little icon above them, and we will be able to see basically what they see, and it will allow you to keep track of units as they move across the map. The next ability is called Envision. This makes the Oracle into a detector, so if invisible units are ravaging your base, you will be able to just spend a little bit of Oracle energy and, you know, turn on this Envision ability, and you will be able to see them all of a sudden. The final ability is called Activate Pulsar Beam. Now, once this ability is activated, it will start to rapidly deplete the Oracle's energy, but it will actually give it access to its attack. So let's go ahead and activate it, and let's attack these Marines. You can see it's devastating to any unit that is classified as light. It doesn't do quite so much damage to anything that's not classified as light, but regardless, you can deactivate the ability once you have it activated in order to conserve that energy, which you definitely should, because if you just accidentally leave it on, suddenly your Oracle is going to be completely out of energy very quickly. Alright, the final unit that I'm going to be talking about today is called the Void Ray. Now, this is kind of a unit that is a lot slower than other units that come out of the Stargate, but what it can do is it can activate what's called the prismatic alignment, and this will effectively double its damage versus armored units. So you can see how long it's taking for it to destroy the Stargate. Let's activate the prismatic alignment, and you can see now it is doing much more damage. Alright, that's it for the Protoss race, all the units that you will probably see most often. If you have any questions, be sure to leave them in the comments and I will be sure to answer them. Thank you very much for watching. This has been Starclass, and my name has been Limbic. Next week we are going to be focusing on the Zerg race. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you all next time.